Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Texas Hill Country fishing report with Greg Welander of Upstream on the Fly. How are you doing, Greg?
Well, hi, Marvin. I'm not too bad. You know, it's a hot one here in the Texas Hill Country, especially for starting off the month of May. We've been having some unseasonably warm weather for the start of May, and we've had some low to mid-90s already.
Yeah, I saw that right before I hopped on with you, that you were almost going to hit the century mark today, and it's only May 4th.
Yes, I know. But there's some good news coming. We're going to have another cold front coming this week, and it'll set us back to our normal low to mid-80s for this time of year. So it looks like the 7-day is definitely going to be in the 80s. So it's time to get on the water, and especially this coming weekend.
Well, that's great. And how's access now? I assume, I've been reading the news. It looks like Texas has kind of been opening up. People are going to be able to get to the water in the next week to 10 days?
Yes. When we last spoke a couple of weeks ago, some of the boat ramps had opened up, and the state parks had also opened up, not for overnight camping, of course, but for day access. And they want you to call ahead and make appointment, to come out to some of the parks. And some of the parks, that have, some of the rivers in them. But as far as highway crossings and bridge crossings and the typical hill country streams, they're open. I mean, you can park and access the water. And it's good that things are starting to come back. And I'm ready to start guiding. So definitely going to start getting some trips on the books. And why don't we start talking a little bit about what's going on and what's coming up. So, before we start talking fishing, I need to mention the flora and the fauna of the Texas Hill Country, because it's very popular this time of the year. On our last report, I mentioned the wildflowers are in bloom here in the Hill Country, and of course the bluebonnet is our state flower. But from my last report, they've been going away. We're into the yellow and oranges of the wildflower. But what a lot of people are not aware of is that we have a state plant of Texas, and that's the prickly pear cactus. So the prickly pear cactus is actually in bloom right now. So the cacti is producing yellow and orange flowers, which will go from May into June. And the reason I bring all this up is for all you guys out there listening, bring your significant other out to the Hill Country. It's a great way to ease the cabin fever that we've all had to deal with this spring. And also the turkeys, the wild turkeys are out there chasing each other. So there's always something going on in the Hill Country.
Yeah, that's great. What does the fishing look like for the next week to 10 days?
Well, let's talk about fishing. So out on our area lakes, including, all the highland lakes, we're experiencing the shad spawn right now. And the shad spawn is usually starts and gets in full swing by late April into the middle to late May. And this typically starts as the water temperatures reach approximately 70 degrees. And it's also coincides with the full and the new moon. So we've got a full moon coming up on May 7th, and we've got a new moon on May 22nd. So if you get out on one of the area lakes at first light, you will see the shad up on the rocky shorelines. And what's going on with that is, till about 7:30, 8 in the morning, you're going to have the shad running the banks. And you kind of have it kind of resembles raindrops falling on the water's edge. And what that is actually the shad up shallow spawning. So the predatory fish, such as your largemouth bass, your Guadalupe bass, are all up shallow feeding on these shad at first light. So it's kind of like us going to the buffet line. So there's plenty of food for the taking, and it's all shad. So for any of you listeners out of state, I don't want you to get confused. We're not actually out fishing for the shad like there are shad runs in other parts of the country. These shad are more of the food for predatory fish, and these are small threadfin shad, roughly 2.5, 3 inches in length, okay? And the reason I bring this up is I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my recent outings and how you really need to match the hatch. I was out on Lake Travis chasing the bass, largemouth bass, and the Guadalupe bass over the last couple of weeks. And some good news is the lake has come up 4 feet. 2 weeks ago during our last report, we were about 10 to 11 feet low on Lake Travis. But it's come up 4 feet, and the fishing's good. It's been extremely good, actually. So I remember it was about 4 o'clock just the other day. I had set my mental alarm clock. 4 o'clock, I'm going to quit. Okay. And the boat ramps that are open, okay, all close at 7 o'clock, and they're fairly crowded. Okay. There's a lot of folks using the boat ramps, but not all the boat ramps are open. And, Lake Travis is, I think, 69 miles long. It was pretty much like I had the lake to myself, but with limited access, there is a lot of folks coming and going on the lake right now. So you kind of have to have that mental time of when you want to quit. You don't want to be showing up at 6:30 in the evening to get out of there, because then you're going to have other people around, and we're trying to distance ourselves from that. So I do remember it was like 4 o'clock. I'm like, I got to quit. Well, in the next 5 minutes, I landed 3 Guadalupes, 2 largemouths, and I was like, okay, I've got to leave the fish biting. And I was using one of Blaine Chocolate's Game Changers in one of the little micro sizes in a shad color. So Lake Travis and some, most of our highland lakes are crystal clear water. So I'm typically using an intermediate line, and I'm getting the fly down a little bit deeper, but in that clear water, using a fly that's very white, it's bright in color, you can see, it's an adrenaline rush. You can see the bass come up, they'll swipe at the fly, they'll spin around, and then do another 180 back on the fly and inhale it. So it's like their first attempt was really stunning the bait fish, and then the second one was to eat it. So it's really cool to see, but I've also been, doing really well with topwaters. Topwater is working really well right now, especially as we get into May. Lake Travis is a topwater lake in the month of May. So it's ideal for a fly fisherman to be able to catch fish up on top.
Yeah, and on top, I know last time we were talking about you weren't quite ready for the frogs yet. Are you throwing frogs?
Well, let's talk about the frogs. So I don't have as much of a frog bite on Lake Travis. And so for a lot of you listeners out there that actually know me, you're probably wondering why I haven't been talking about the big bass fishing on the lower Colorado River, which is east of Austin. And, this time of year is definitely a frog bite. So what's going on the Colorado River right now is there's really 2 reasons why I haven't been over there. One is the boat ramps that are all owned by Lake Travis County Parks are currently closed. And this is all due to the coronavirus rulings that we've been dealing with over the last month to 2 months now. But on a side note, I do have private river access, so I can work with closed boat ramps. But the bigger reason I have not been fishing the Colorado over the last, month or two, besides the coronavirus, is the water's been running high. So Longhorn Dam is our last dam in the series of the 7 Highland Lakes, and they've been running around 3,500 CFS down the Colorado River. So it's making it very tough to fish, or should I say, tough to catch fish. I normally like the Colorado River to be around 300 to 400 CFS at most, and it's running 3,500 during the peak once a day. However, out in that neck of the woods, there is Lake Bastrop, which is another tremendous fishery, and the frog bite is going on over there on Lake Bastrop. So if you got to have that frog bite, that's definitely the spot to be right now for frog fishing on the fly rod.
Very cool. And how are some of the other rivers that you like to fish doing?
Yeah, so, all of our typical hill country streams are all fishing really well right now. You've got the Pedernales, various sections of the Llano River, but not all of the Llano's fishing. And that's due to the historical flood that we had back in the fall of 2019. So that wiped out a lot of the fish population on the Llano, but there are sections out there that are fishing. There is definitely there's a rebound. It's not the 75 to 100 fish days, but the Guadalupe bass in certain areas are doing well. And there's definitely sunfish that are rebounding as well. So give it a few more years, and the whole river will be fishing. But I definitely have some spots identified that are fishing good. And the one closest to my house is the San Gabriel River. There's a North Branch and a South Fork as well. So they both have been fishing well. There's still plenty of water. However, it's starting to get dry right now. We are starting to get in a little bit drier pattern. So hopefully we'll get another good rain here another month to keep that going through the summer. But if you want to talk about some fly patterns, let's talk about what we should be fishing with right now. Okay. So for on the lakes, for your stillwater anglers, I'm liking topwater. Your various hard popping bugs, or various hard poppers, kind of like a boogle bug, for example. Your frog patterns, deer hair bugs are one of my favorites, and baitfish imitation for the shad spawn. So dogbird divers and your whites and gray colors are working really well. And then your streamers, anything resembling shad up on the lake. So game changers and shad colors, your clouser minnows, your half and halves are all working well. And if we go over to our rivers and creeks, of course, the dragonfly and the damselfly nymphs are starting to be my go-to pattern, because I'm starting to see a lot more dragonflies and damselflies as we get into the middle of the day. Crawfish variations and your river minnow imitations are always worth fishing, of course. And your hard popping bugs, your little boogle bugs up on top for the rivers and the smaller creeks. So, Marvin, that's pretty much sums up what I have on the Hill Country Fishing Report.
Well, it sounds like things are getting better by the day. And folks, remember, we love questions on the Articulate Fly. And if you'll send us a question on the Articulate Fly Facebook page, if we read it on the Fishing Report, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and you're going to get entered into a drawing for some cool stuff that Greg is going to put together at the end of the season. Before I let you hop, and I guess, I don't know, we didn't even talk about whether it's a Shinerbach evening or maybe we got Cinco de Mayo coming up. Maybe it's a margarita evening. Greg, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can book you and fish with you?
Well, you bet. Since Cinco de Mayo week is this week, I would say a Dos Equis with lime would be my chosen drink for the week. But you can find me on my website, upstreamonthefly.com. And then I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook as Upstream on the Fly.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, folks, get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Greg.
Thanks, Marvin.